a Saturday, and especially with all the games going on. And in the morning there might be no football games, but in the afternoon certainly there will be new games. So we will try to finish before that, to allow you to follow those games. Yes, indeed, today is a more practical day. Really, even what are the steps that are required to actually write a successful proposal? And I'll give you examples of successful projects, and this discussion share with you what are the factors that make a success there, and what is expected of European projects. Now, as I said yesterday, the examples I give and all the information I share with you about EU projects, you can directly apply to write successful projects for other funding bodies. So the principles are generic, although the actual information is all tailored to the European Union. Why the European Union? I explained already yesterday. It's a very open program, open for you, for Africans, to participate on an equal basis to the European partners if you're up to the same quality. And the evaluators are expecting you to contribute actively and receive money on the same rights and the same basis. So there's a high level. So you really have to be prepared well in order to be able to compete in that scheme. But as I said yesterday, if you have European partners who have done this before, you can really learn from them. And please, I share these slides with you with a lot of information there. Don't worry, don't have to write notes on the details, and I will skip very fast to some of the slides, because this is really meant as a repository, almost like a handbook for you. And you will get copies of all the presentations, and you can even have access to the video to review the workshop afterwards and dig into the details. And I will squeeze in the time a little bit now, so that at least you have an idea which information is where, what are the principles, how to go about, what are the steps. And then the details of the information and the web links that I will share with you and the examples, you can review again. So don't be nervous about too much information in a dense period of time. Having said that, let's go on. For those who were not here yesterday, that is just a reference from my own background, which is a mixed background. I'm a scientist like you, working for 15 years in academia and then moving to industry for 13 years. So I have the double background, and I know what the difficulties are of collaborating between academia and industry and how to negotiate between the two. And I will cover that part, finance, negotiation and intellectual property in more detail after the coffee break. So before the coffee break, it's really about what is the information in Europe, how to find partners, how to navigate through that jungle of information and rules. And after the coffee break, we will go down to an actual project. What does it look like? Actual text in proposals. How are evaluators judging this? What are financial things? We have a budget as an example to show you what are the components in the budget and the intellectual property things as far as that you need to be aware of. Okay, I will skip this because that is just the background information of our company here. And the reason why I'm here, for those who were not here yesterday, my company is partner in a larger project together with the University of Buea to help you to set up workshops and train and eventually set up an association of universities in Central Africa to help set up workshops and train and learn from each other, not just from us, but especially from each other here in Africa. So that is the reason why you see this logo. Sorry. This one is very sensitive, huh? Why you see this logo, RIMI for AC, that is Research and Innovation Management Initiative for the AC countries, the African and Caribbean countries. And that is a project where Josefa Foba is our contact person in this university. So she will have all this information on her, in her office. And if you want to have the copies of the presentation, please leave your email address with her so that you can get a copy of the full presentations. I will have my business cards here too, so during the coffee break you can get a copy of these. The structure of the presentation, as I said, is going into the FP7 program, seeing exactly how you find partners and negotiate, talk a little bit about dissemination of research results, because that is a very important part of the project. And then after the coffee break, go into finance and intellectual property and actual examples of projects. This slide some of you have seen yesterday already, but for those who are new, there are several reasons for going into research funding from bodies like the European Commission, and there are positive reasons for that. Things you would like to build up through your project, not just the money, but the contacts, the networks, having access to things that you don't have in your laboratory. And there are also reasons to participate to avoid that you become isolated and with lack of resources and lack of experts. So those are two reasons, really drivers to partner and find partners outside your own university. Now, to obtain money and get to convince a funding agency to invest in your project, not only in your laboratory, but in the whole consortium of a project with several universities working together, you need to convince that investing money in that research project will deliver value for society. And the European Commission is obviously, because this is European taxpayers' money, looking for European value. That does not preclude that you can build value here locally. So there are multiple ways of showing where the value is. You can build value for Europe and value in your laboratory by keeping the people, by getting resources to train and to build up your laboratory with equipment or to do field studies, while at the same time delivering a solution for a problem in Europe. So these are not exclusive of each other. And the key element to be successful in research project funding for anybody is to convince them that you are delivering together value, finding a solution for a big problem. Now, as I said, there are many funding agencies and programs that can give you calls. And you have to really think first, not where is the money and how do I get it? Because if there is a call, people immediately start writing and thinking, can I get access to that bag of money in Brussels? But it's far more important to first design a strategy for your own team, for your own work, and see, does this project that you have in mind fit in a longer strategy of where you want to be next year, year thereafter? Because obtaining money from the European Commission or the WHO or the World Bank often takes a year or more. So you have to think ahead. And you have also to think ahead whether the results will be useful 3-4 years after the project is finished. So you really need a strategy there. And then some things can better be funded through national projects, through your own government or locally funded foundations, than through international projects. So think carefully and choose which instrument to use. And usually national funding and private foundations are easier than the European Commission funding and the World Bank funding. So I'm not telling you a rosy story here. Getting into European funding is quite difficult, is highly competitive for you, but also for us. I know many Italian, Spanish and Swedish teams who try and do not get into these programs because they miss one piece of a puzzle. And I will show you today what are all the pieces of the puzzle to be successful. So it's really a strategic instrument and not just to get money. It's to build capacity in your own laboratory and to build in the long term something that really reaches out so you're visible in the world. Because these projects are highly visible and they really deliver value in the long term. One thing I will show you later this morning before coffee break is the actual work programs that will be published next month, where the calls for many calls for research in different areas, for example for health or ICT and food and environment research, will be released in July. And they will be out on the internet. I have them on my computer here already. You can get a copy today. And you can already start looking and choosing calls before they are going to be published. I'm living in Brussels and close to the European Commission, so I get the draft programs before they are being published. That gives you at least a month extra time. The deadlines are somewhere between October and December of this year. So you have one month extra time to find partners and get prepared, and you will definitely need that. To write a good project takes a few months, actually, from start idea to actually submission. Okay. Working with international partners in Europe, in different countries, in Africa, in India, and Latin America, all of those can participate. So it's a really global program that way. It's not just language differences, but also cultural differences. So be aware that if you actually start talking to potential partners, that you ask exactly what they are expecting of you, and that you express and present precisely what you're offering of value to them. You're not asking for money, you're offering your value to them. Your expertise, your special equipment, your special materials, your special knowledge of local environment. Local trees that are growing here, or local fruits that are produced, local agricultural practices, traditional knowledge in languages and culture that you can offer and compare in projects like that. That is what you're offering. And in order to collaborate, then of course you ask for some subsidies. But the focus is collaboration, sharing information, knowledge, and building something new. And the subsidies are only an instrument. And I stress that several times because most scientists are always complaining about lack of money. And they first want to have money and then think what they were going to do with it. You should do that the other way around. Okay, the other thing that you should be aware of, that some of these programs are very, very large. You will see in the work programs that certain parts of the program are reserved for projects between 6 and 20 million euros. That is massive. That means that you have many partners, not only university partners, but also government bodies and industry. And the complexity requires very, very professional management. So don't be surprised if you would be invited or you get the chance to be a small partner in such a large consortium, that the coordinator will have very, very highly professional management practices, and you simply have to follow their advice. You cannot just influence the whole project alone. If you're focusing on the smaller projects, and I will give examples of those too, there you have more influence, but always the coordinator will be a European university or organization, because they have the experience of working with the European Commission. So keep a good relationship with your coordinator is crucial. And you can learn a lot from them, and then next time you can be more active in the driving seat. Why is Europe actually investing so much money in research, even with African partners or Indian or Latin American partners? Because the problems that we need to face and find solutions for are global problems. Climate change, food security, immigration problems, health problems, infectious diseases that are spread through immigration. Those are the big issues. And in Europe, more than here perhaps, also additional problems like healthy aging, assisted living for older people. Those are high on the agenda in Europe, and economic challenges. Sustainable environment and sustainable development challenges, renewable energies, but also renewable ways, sustainable business models. People have been just using resources out of the earth and damaging the environment. But if you can work together on business models that are renewing their resources and materials, that is much more sustainable in the long term. Now, coming back to the traditional knowledge, quite often traditional ways of doing things in the old days were much more sustainable than the modern type of industries. So going back to those traditions sometimes gives ideas for better management and better business models. So there's a clear value that you may be sitting on that you don't realize here. Okay? There's a clear need for international cooperation because Europe cannot do it alone. That's clear. We are really convinced of that. And some of the problems that you have here directly affect us, and we're in the same boat together. It's one global Earth that we're living on. Now, European funding is not just to fund everything. There should be base funding in your organization that pays for the building, for the electricity, and for some of the salaries. And that cannot be replaced. But on top of that, European funding can help to fund extra salaries or hire extra people or co-fund some of the salaries of the key experts you have and buy equipment and buy extra resources and consumables. And we will go into the budgets later. But it's really a glue between the partners to collaborate with, not to budget or to fund their complete resource. It's also always goal-oriented and project-based funding. It's never program funding. So you have to be very clear what you want to achieve. And then, of course, it's very open, as I said, to African participants on an equal basis. So it's a strategic instrument, as I said, and not giving only access to new ideas and new applications and finding critical mass to attack the larger projects and problems together, but also it's fun to collaborate with international partners. It's really enriching to learn from different foods, different cultures, and if you have an international project, you can invite the European partners to enjoy the good climate and the culture here for a meeting, and that is a really good reason to collaborate too, on top of the other reasons. This some of you have seen already, but for those who are new, European funding programs, all the documentation is funded on this principle. Using research for innovation. So translating ideas from the lab to something that can be used in society is very important. Hence, there is always, in the larger projects, and sometimes in the smaller projects too, an intense collaboration with industry, especially with small, medium enterprises, because those are the most innovative industries, not the big companies. And the link between research and education. So research, new research, can enrich your education programs. And on the other way, education gives leaders in industry and leaders in research. So the triangle is really feeding on all angles. Okay, let's go into the actual Framework 7 program for research in Europe. Just one reminder, I talked about small, medium enterprises. In Europe, a small, medium enterprise definition is maybe not that small here. It has to be less than 250 people in-house, a turnover that is quite considerable actually. And the third element, it has to be independent. So a daughter company of Merck, pharmaceutical company, with 20 people here in Cameroon is not an SME. It's wholly owned by Merck, so it's Merck signing the contract. That is a big company. However, a small company or a legal entity, an organization here with 20 people and just a few €100,000 that is independent or a spin-off of the university, those can be completely acknowledged as SMEs. And the European Commission really wants to stimulate the participation of SMEs in these programs. So if you happen to have small, medium enterprises here coming from Africa to participate, that would be even better. Okay, look regularly on this website, and I will show you the complete website address in a few slides later, but open calls are really coming up regularly. There's one website that I want to share with you in South Africa that is called the ESA-STOP. If you go to the SARIMA website and then you look and link to ESA-STOP, and I will show you the website link later. ESA-STOP website is in South Africa regularly displaying all the open calls from Europe. So that's a one-stop shop for information where you can start looking for information. But the actual information is on the Cordis website of the European Commission. And I will go open here one of the work programs as an example so that you know what to expect and how to read. Because it's very, very detailed descriptions there. The general conditions to participate are 3 independent participants, university, legal entity, association, industry. All of those can be a participant from the 3 different member states in Europe. So for example, 1 in Italy, 1 in France, and 1 in Sweden. That is the minimum. On top of that, anybody from the rest of the world can participate. That means that you cannot have a bilateral of a Swedish institute with a Cameroon institute. That's not the European project. You have to have at least 3 European partners. And on top of that, all your African partners can participate. There's one exception, well, 2. There's a program that is called Coordination and Support Actions. These are actions that pay for networking, for conferences and workshops. And they can be led by just one partner if they deliver also European value. So a European project that is only located in Cameroon would not be eligible. But if you have one partner that also delivers value in Cameroon and in Europe, that is possible. So there is money for certain networks and conferences. And the other scheme, which is very interested, is called SICA, is Specific International Coordination Actions. And these are very, very specific projects that are research-based, but they're focused on problems outside Europe. That is the one exception where people can, two participants from 2 different European countries, plus 2 participants from 2 different regions outside. So for example, if there is a SICA on environmental waste or environmental control between Europe and Africa, you need minimum 2 African partners in 2 different countries and 2 European partners in 2 different European countries. It can be more. You can go up to 20, I mean, but that is the minimum. And these are really focused on the problems here, not on the problems in Europe. As I said, some of the problems we share. So a solution here would be good for Europe too. But that is the exception. The general rule is this. And this is for the general research projects that I will present in a minute. There's another one, is a program called People, which I have a separate presentation on, and that is for exchange of scientists. If you go to that Cordis website, you see that the whole program is focused in a number of blocks. The People's Program for Staff, Fellows, and Exchange is here. And you just follow the colored line, and then you have the specific calls and documentation for that program. And the other program is Cooperation, which is really the biggest part for actual research and development. There's some other programs that you may simply disregard. Euratom, JRCs, those are really European programs that are open only for European partners. But the Cooperation, People, and one in the capacities are open for African partners. As I said, Cooperation research is by far the biggest, and the whole program is more than 50 billion euro invested in research in Europe over 7 years. And that is, we are halfway down this program, and already they're thinking about the next program starting 2014. Under this big chunk of cooperation, you will have several different themes, and I will show you one of the programs there under either health or food. And you will see that the calls are actually overlapping. Each of these calls are focused on a problem that they want to address, but the activities under that program can come from different sources. For example, if you have a food program for quality of and safety of food, preservation of fruits so that there are no infections and that people can safely eat, that can be a call. To do that, you need biologists and biochemists, you need microbiologists or parasitologists, you need agricultural science, you need social science maybe, to work with the communities, you need industrial science to conserve and produce, and the logistics. So there's a lot of disciplines involved in solving that solution. Now, if you're a biochemist, you might find that one very interesting, but as your biochemistry expertise can maybe also used in a health program or even in a nanoscience program. So do read the different programs and see where your discipline might fit as part of the puzzle. So there's considerable possibilities here to collaborate, not just in your classical discipline alone. It's after all the whole consortium that is judged where it fits in the themes, not only your discipline. There's a lot of money there, but some chunks get more money than others. Not everybody is equal here. The information technologies, ICTs, they get the biggest amount of money. Food, agriculture is somewhat smaller, health is in between, and then you will see nano and environment are smaller ones. But they might be extremely interesting, and that does not mean that the projects are smaller. It's the total program that's actually smaller. I will skip this one because that is really for top scientists working in Europe alone. Capacities, you will find a very interesting one that is specifically aimed for practical solutions for SMEs, and I will give one example of a project under that program. And you have policy research, development of research policies, and international cooperation for workshops and training and conferences. So these are interesting to look at if you fit there at the policy level or at the capacity building level. And that is another thing. These pay for 100% of the expenses, while the research projects are co-funded and partially funded. Under the People's Program, and maybe we can now go to the other presentation, there are a number of schemes here. Just let me put down one thing here. There are a number of schemes here that you can exchange people from Europe to Africa or from Africa to Europe in very individual ways or in a more networked fashion. And some of these programs like this, that, and that are open to third country nationals. Third country is a technical term in Europe. It's not third world. You have the first country, first party is the European Commission itself. The second party are the European member states. And third country means any country outside Europe. So even the United States is a third country in this technical jargon. Please remember that. Especially these two, COFAND and IRSIS, are international research exchange partnerships that are mandatory to go outside Europe. The other schemes here are moving within Europe from one country to another. So if we briefly go to the other presentation, if you allow me, I sit here. Where is it? Let me see, I need to find the escape here somewhere. This is a presentation from the European Commission. And you see that this is the chunk of money for the People's Program. The objectives are really geographical and sectorial exchange of people. Moving from one country to another is geographic mobility, and sectorial is moving from one sector to another, from one discipline to completely different discipline in a different university, or even specifically from university to industry or from industry to university. And I will give an example of a project like that. The salaries are quite high, even for European standards, so that is not the point. And the chances for success are higher than the large research projects. So I really encourage you to have a look at this, because it's a fantastic way to start an exchange with a European university and then learn from their network and prepare for larger research projects later. It's not just for students, it's definitely for postgraduates of less than 4 years experience after their degree, and even for postdocs and group leaders and or science managers. And this is a very interesting one for those who are interested in becoming a research manager. Research managers and administrators dealing with research can participate in this exchange scheme as long as they're related to a topic that is related to science. The topics themselves are not indicated, so you're completely free to design your own topic. And these are the websites where all the information is in there, so just download there and have a look in detail what the information is there. IRSIS are specifically for research staff, including research managers, to move between Europe and other countries like Africa. And that is the website here. I will give a blown-up version later, but all that information is on this website of the Commission. There's one other website that is very interesting, with links to the other websites again, is the Marie Curie Actions website on the Europa server, where also job vacancies are listed. And there are thousands of jobs available there, and you can directly apply to them. So these are universities who have money and are looking for experts to take up those grants and fellowships. That is a fantastic way to really start building connections with European partners. And well, there's an enormous amount of information there, and it's very, very transparent, so I don't even have to explain it. You will find all the information that is necessary on those. And there's a help desk. If you have problems, you can ask them. Okay. Now we go back to the main presentation. As I was referring already, there are several different types of funding and financing. There are very large projects, really large ones. They can be up to 20, 25 partners, much more than 10 million euro even, and they last for a longer period of time. But really, you should not even think about starting those larger projects, because they are always led by European coordinators, and they usually have been prepared years in advance by first building up smaller projects and then matching them and collating them into larger ones. However, if you happen to know a partner in those larger organizations, larger projects that are running now, they might invite you to become partner in the larger future projects. So if you already have contacts in Europe, ask them whether they're participating in these large projects, and ask them whether they would like to invite you into the next project. That way, it's a fantastic way to start learning the game. But you cannot drive that from here. What you can drive is ideas for the small, focused, collaborative projects. These are relatively smaller projects. There's the minimum of 3 partners, as I said before, but usually this is the average, what I see as an evaluator for the European Commission. And they're around 3 million European subsidies, and they run up to 4 years with a very clear target, a very clear endpoint. Yes?
You must have noticed that quite a few phones have gone off since we started. Whilst we don't want to be heavy-handed, I think that it distracts. So we'll just ask all of those who are here to switch off their phones, please. Switch off your phones, or you put them on vibration, and be sure that your vibration mode works properly. Thank you.
Okay. There's a specific instrument that I mentioned before, coordination specific support actions, and these are not research projects, but they pay for workshops, networking on topics to discuss an issue together, or conferences, specific conferences to solve issues. The minimum there is at least 1 partner, but it has to have a European dimension. So that 1 partner usually is an association that takes charge, and I will give an example of it later. The budgets are smaller, but it's 100% funded, and as I again said, it's not to pay for the research expenses, but to enable research projects later. And they discuss standards, they discuss policy, and they discuss training, quality, harmonization measures. Research management training is one of them. We had several projects in the past under this. Then there are the specific international cooperation actions, the SICA measures, as I mentioned before, and these are really interesting because they focus on problems here, and the people program. That is the website that you should look at regularly, and unfortunately the internet here is not fast enough to actually give a live demonstration, but it's very intuitive. If you log on this one, you find here, find the calls, you get all the active calls that are open now. If you click on any of these, you will get all the relevant information that is specific for that call. All the work programs, all the forms, all the guidelines, all the relevant background policy documents is packaged as one package. Each call has its own package. So if you have downloaded work programs or guidelines from forms from one call, do not mix them up with the forms for another call. The forms are specific for each call, so be careful with that. And just download them in a separate folder with the call name on your own computer, and you can read them at ease. There's a search engine here, find project partners and find documents, and that is very useful to find partners, because this is the database of all the European projects of the last, 10, 15 years. So all the partners in Africa or in Europe or in Latin America, anywhere in the world, who have achieved a grant from the European Union will be there. The summaries and the links and telephone numbers, emails of all the participants. That means that you can find there successful grantees, organizations that have won a grant, know how to do it, have been successful in completing and are looking for partners for the next grants. So these are the winners, if you like, especially if you search for coordinators of projects. And you can then approach them with an email and ask them, are you preparing a project for the next call in this? I have an idea for that project. Would you like to be discussing this in detail? Or would you know another partner who might be working on that? Use their networks this way. And you might get uninterested people once in a while, but keep trying, because if you present your idea in an interesting way, like I said, delivering what value you can bring to a possible project that they don't have, that maybe giving an antibody that has very specific activities, or having a patient population that does not exist in Europe. That is value for them, and then they might become interested to learn more, and then you're in. So that is certainly one good way to start looking for proposals. More information than what I tell in my presentation can be found under Understand FP7. There are guidelines, there are booklets there that you can actually even print out and give to your students so that they can help you finding the information. You don't have to do everything alone, no? Let's open one of the work programs to get a real view, an actual view of what I'm talking about. Because some of these programs are very, very detailed. Let's have a look at the food program that will be published. This program is a draft now. It will be published next month with deadlines in November and December. I just give one example here. It's KBBE, stands for Knowledge-Based Bioeconomy. And that is in practice, food and agriculture research. They have a specific number, and then behind that is a name of the call. And this is the program called FP7 KBBE for Food and Agriculture, Program 2011, Call 5. This one example, and you see 58 pages, so there are many calls like this. This is just one example to give you an idea how much detail there is in there. This is about sustaining and managing forest, tree genetic resources. And they start with a description from what is the problem. Forests are Europe's most important renewable resource. They want to know and conserve and increase the wooded land, increase the preserve biodiversity, optimize the various services around forest management. Similarly, forest management practices need to be exchanged, and the project will bring together and further develop genetic resources in Europe. Now, you may not have European trees, but you may have forest management practices that could be shared with European partners. So that is the way to reach this, to read it. From where do you fit in, and how can you help your European partners to achieve this problem, to achieve a solution for this problem? Requested budget shall not be more than 3 million euro. So if you ask for 3 million and €1, you're not eligible. Be careful with that. But the European coordinator should take care of that. Expected impact. Read this one carefully too, because that should be the outcome after the 3 or 4 years of research. Resources and information created will contribute to the forest sector with adequate tools to adapt forest management, changing the environmental conditions, and meeting the diverse demands from economic activities, biological diversity conservation, and society. That means you need a coherent and a holistic approach, not just listing the genetic resources alone, but other people in the consortium should exchange practices and make a link to society. So there's a dissemination activity there too. But on the other hand, with 3 million euro, you can do quite a bit of interesting things. I take at random another one just to give you an idea. Strategies to replace copper-based products as plant protection products in low input and organic farming systems. Now, you might have good practice here in Africa that could help. Fungicides, bactericides, pest control, potentiators of resistance to keep those at bay, control agents. So biological pest control, that's what it is about. Again, eligibility criteria are spelled out and they're different from the other call. So each call has their own requirements. There's a strong emphasis here on SMEs. You see 25% or more of the subsidy has to go to SMEs. And then, the output should be non-chemical pest control measures. Just to give you a glimpse here. Then, in the health area, let me give you one other example. Under health, this program is still a draft, so it's not spelled out completely, but by next month there will be a much more complete text. But again here, there's a call on translational research, so linking research with hospitals or patients in the major infectious diseases. There's another one under neurological diseases, and there's another one on the cancer and on diabetes. So each chapter here has their own set of calls. And this one, for example, is about investigator-driven clinical trials for off-patent antibiotics. Now, that could be a very interesting one here. And you see, in practice, you go into preclinical studies on pharmacokinetics and pharmacodynamics, on individualization, personal medicine, on off-patent antimicrobial agents. Why? Because in Europe we have a lot of infections in hospitals, and that cannot be fought with the first generation anymore. And we need to find cheap solutions that are still effective and have and improve access to those to a wide range of patients. Not only in Europe, this is even more critical for Africa, I would say. You see the size of this project is bigger, like 6 million euro, it's quite a lot of money. So the industry can have and the hospitals for the clinical trials can actually really tap into this for doing clinical studies. This is completely new. In the past, the European programs have not paid for the clinical trials, only for laboratory research. But after a lot of pressure from medical doctors, they now accept the smaller clinical trials too. And there's a clear impact on drug resistance. That's a mounting problem. So here you have a complex and coherent research project that has value for both Europe as well as for Africa. And if you read the programs this way, you can start thinking about what are the possible partners you can work with. Take your time to read these documents together with your colleagues, because you need multidisciplinary reading in this case. You may be a biochemist and your colleague might be a clinician, and both of you will read this program in a different way. Each of them will pick out different elements out of the call. So share that with your colleagues, sit together, organize a meeting, and go through all the calls and see exactly where, as an institute, you can get the best guess, and then prioritize and see, this is my top selection, that's the second selection, and that's the third one which doesn't fit really. Okay, before coffee break I go quickly to a number of the actual work plans, and you will see a lot of slides here. I skipped very rapidly through them, but they're only as example, and you can actually go through the web links later yourself to really look into the details. So just bear with me if we zip through a lot of slides quickly now. One slide I want to stand here. You start with the idea, focus a final objective of what you want to achieve in the whole project. Together with your partners, develop a summary, and you send that summary to potential partners and to say, this is my idea of the project. And would you be interested in partnering? Nobody is interested in immediately receiving 20 pages of a draft. They want to see just an executive summary. That's the idea. These are the partners we have in mind. That is what we are looking for in your contribution. Would you like to be a partner? As simple as that. Then people will actually read and respond. We're all pressed for time, and especially if you're talking to the busiest people, they're the best. So then develop, if you have partners working with, divide roles and tasks. You should not look for another biochemist if you're a biochemist. If you're a biochemist, you should look for a clinician or a microbiologist or an industrialist. Look for complementary roles and tasks, different pieces of the puzzle that match together. Then you develop a proposal structure with different work packages, and all of you should probably be familiar with those structures, so I will give an example later. Develop a work plan, a budget. I will spend more time later on the governance and on the exploitation strategy and dissemination, because that is a crucial element in it. And then already think about management and closing and using the exploitation of the results, because quite often, as I see as evaluator, that the proposals that are sent to the Commission, they do not fail on the science, but they fail on the management and on the impact. So you have to pay attention to those, because that is a critical factor for evaluation. And the differences between two really good proposals, but one explains better how they are going to tell the world about the solution, and the other one just focusing on the science. 1 point extra means that you're in or you're out. Now the next 20 slides or so I zip through, because all of these are examples where you can find specific pieces of information. I mentioned already Cordis. Look at OECD and the Eurostat website. If you Google OECD, the Organization for Economic Development, they have a lot of background information on statistics, on patients, populations, on agricultural impacts, and on the size of problems. So you can use the facts and figures there in your proposal to justify your statements. And use these information sources to have a look, again, to justify the statements that you make. Then there's information in Europe about European markets, about different organizations that are active in Europe that you may not be aware of. Then there is the European research area, which is being constructed. That is a word in Europe that means, how do we keep a marketplace for research as free and open and sharing as possible? And that is high on the agenda of the European Commission. So if your research project contributes to achieving more collaboration between European partners, fantastic. Then if your project contributes to better economic investment or money investment in research and achieving goals in Europe like 3% of money invested in research, that is one of the arguments that you can use in the first chapter as well. And then, of course, the OECD website you can find here with a lot of background information. This one, the Joint Research Center, is a research center from the European Commission itself. So there's a lot of information there on European research. This is a website for databases on finding who is who in Europe. And there you can find emails and telephone contact details of project officers inside the European Commission. And you can send them an email and say, this is my idea for a project. Do you think that this would fit in that call? And then quite often they will be open and send you an email back and something, yes, it fits, or no, it doesn't fit. So you can do that. If you do that 2 months, 3 months before the deadline, you already have an idea whether the fit is right or not. European project officers are quite open to do that. And you can find their emails here through the Who is Who in Europe. Also, you find the structure of the European Commission and what is going on in other areas in Europe. And this is related to mobility, a mobility portal where, again, jobs and hosting institutes are listed, so you can look for partners here under these links, or search per country, or search per sector, or per university, from who is open to receive fellows from Africa. This is a very interesting source of information. There is an informal group of offices in Brussels that work for their own countries, and they gather information, they walk the corridors in Brussels, and they know the draft programs in advance, etc. So each of these will give that information to all the universities in their own country. South Africa has another one which is not listed here yet, but South Africa has its own office. And that is one of the reasons why South Africa is in SARIMA is so active, because they'll get the information early. Now, if you have a partner in Germany, ask your partner in Germany to go to COVI, the German office, and get that information from them. Or you can ask the office in Germany or any of the others directly and say, I have a partner in your country, would you mind sharing that information with me? You can subscribe to their newsletters, and that way you get all that information very early on. So this is a very important one, to tap into the unknown information and much earlier than it's published. If you're working at the policy level or innovation level, innovative regions, there are more than 300 regions in Europe, and they have their own money for additional programs. So outside the European Framework Program, you might find money at the regional level to collaborate too. There's the European Business Network that is working in links between university and businesses, and incubators and science parks, so that is a useful website if you're working and setting up businesses and business support services. This I explained yesterday. That's Big Industry Management Organization, the European University Association, and of course the Association of Commonwealth Universities. They have their own documentation on their websites. The European Association of Research Technology Organizations. These are research technology, research institutes that are doing applied research, and they are closer to industry and application areas. So you will find in their membership a lot of possible partners for very applied research. Wonderful resource for finding partners. And they have policy documents on European programs too. And then there is the Association of Technology Transfer Offices and the Association of Research Management Offices in Europe. I was president of this university association before. You will find some information there, especially on licensing and model agreements you can find there. Of course, don't forget SARIMA as one of our partners in our project. They have information on their website, and you can find from the SARIMA a link to ESASTAT project with the last calls from the program, and also a link to Research Africa, which is a service provider with a database where you can search for calls. So these are links through to information that is available already, that is related to Africa. And hopefully in the future we will have a Karima for Central Africa and do the same thing closer to you here. More websites. I just share that with you, and you can have a glimpse at your ease so that you don't start from scratch. This is an interesting one, is Association of All European Biotech Industries. That's a lot of information is there on agriculture, on ethics, on genetically modified organisms, on industrial-wide biotechnologies, and it's one of our partners, and I've been working very closely together with them, and you will find extremely useful information if you're linked to biotechnology in any way on Europa Bio. Health biotechnology, agricultural biotechnology, and industrial biotechnology. Let me see. Just a few slides before. Yeah, I'm still on time. I'm sorry. Did we have coffee at 11 or 10:30? 11. Okay. No, that's good. So I'm not late. Just an example of actual proposal. The moment that you have filled in the administrative forms online, or your coordinator has done that for you, then the second part, so-called part B of the proposal is the actual proposal itself. And you see that there is a standard format. For most of the proposals, they follow this format. There are exceptions. As I said before, download the forms for that particular call, because each call has small modifications. Thank you. Generally, it starts with an overview of what do you want to achieve, the objectives of this particular project, and how it is relevant to the objectives of the call. If the call asks for pest control in agricultural practices on a biological basis, you have to explain how your project contributes to finding a solution to that call. And that fit has to be really good, because if there's not a good fit, even if the rest of the proposal is fantastic, you will be out. So there has to be an absolute fit into what the call is asking for. Except for the open programs like the People program, where you can define your own content. But for the research collaboration projects, you have to fit exactly and explain how you want to fit. The other thing is that aside from the technical work plan, you need to explain what is the impact. How do you bring the results to the people who need the solution, to the patients, to the farmers, to the policy makers? That you have to explain how to do that. And I will give you examples exactly on projects how to do that. If you don't do that, you may fail. Then you describe the composition of the consortium and the project resources. And resources means not only budget, but also capacity in intellectual expertise and materials that you can share. For example, in an agricultural project, you might offer the use of a plantation pilot study, plantation lands where plants can grow, and the capacity of a team that knows to work with new crops. That is something you can offer. So that is a resource into the project. In the health research, you may have potential drug candidates that have been tested in the laboratory, but you don't know whether that works in a patient. So you work together with European partners who do animal studies, you write a clinical trial protocol, and then you may have a partner with a hospital with that particular patient group. So that is the offer into the resources. Expertise and resources that you can offer into the project. That needs to be described very well, because the evaluator will look, is the puzzle complete, or are there missing pieces here? And remember, these evaluators are experienced in their field. They're not just bureaucrats, they are experts in the field. And there are 3 or 4 evaluators judging each proposal, and they all have a different perspective. One will be an academic, another one will be industry specialist, and a third academic or a policy specialist. And together they write the evaluation. So all the aspects need to be monitored at top excellence, the best you can. And then, usually the project coordinator writes the project management chapter. This is just chapter 2-3 pages maximum, very concise. But you need to convince the evaluator that you know what you're doing and that you know how to manage it. So do read it critically, and if you think that something is there in the chapter that does not fit your needs, contact your coordinator and discuss it with him. For example, the number of meetings that you're going to hold, the place of the meetings, the decision body. I will come back to that later in a moment. So those are important things that will be judged, and they get their own score. And only then you have this work plan where you introduce what you want to do, your project planning, the timetable, a presentation between the work packages and the actual work packages where you can express all the details you like. It's a very very clear structure. The final chapter is other issues, and many people gloss that over. I must confess that gender issues are in this nice to have. If you have 2 equal proposals, you have in one proposal a better use of female scientists and managers, then that one will get not a better score, but it might amuse the evaluator. But what is really important are the issues there, ethical and safety issues, to describe that. Because the evaluator will only judge the proposal what is written in there. they have the feeling that you don't know the ethical issues involved, or don't have safety issues really well controlled, then you might disregard the whole proposal. So really, really pay attention to that one too. Don't forget it. How does the evaluator actually battery is probably getting low here. How does the evaluator actually read such a proposal? Imagine the evaluator goes to, or they read it online. They have to read 50 proposals, each between 40 and 80 pages. It's impossible to do in a week or two. So, and I do the same. First, look at the summary, go to the overall objectives, and you look at packages, and you see the logic there.
Okay, from now.
Thank you. I'll just hold it. Looks a bit ridiculous, but as long as it does work, gives you a good laugh, no? And then the evaluator goes deeper. If he or she misses a piece, then he will dig into the details of the text. But usually they start from the overall structure, and they get a feeling already whether it is, right? That's quick. They get a feeling already whether there's a logic, whether all the elements that they expect are there, and whether it's well explained. It's easy to navigate through the proposal. Not just 60 pages of text without structure, but with graphic elements, tables, headings, paragraphs. That is the first impression you give to an evaluator. And if they're pleased, then they will move on with a more motivated fashion. If they're displeased, already you need much more convincing in your text. So the layout is important. It really is important. Think of the evaluator after 60 proposals being dead 12 o'clock at night and not even to see a proposal. It has to. So try to be enthusiastic, try to be motivating, and explain that for society. Okay, thank you. So the way an evaluator reads a text like this is, example, the first page, and this is taken from an actual proposal that was successful for building HIV vaccines, health proposal. And I'm not going to explain exactly what is being done, but the way they read is they look, is somebody knowledgeable about the size of the problem? Do they have background information on the size of the number of patients that are not treated and in need of a new vaccine? Give facts and figures so that you substantiate that it's a really important problem and that you know how big the problem is. And then it's a bullet points of how do you want to attack it? What is your work plan? Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. And use verbs here. Compare this one preparation with another, and construct a piece of DNA, develop a concept, treat people, doctors. Could be not be very problem interference. Let me give the yes. Let me microphone. This might be dangerous.
You can sit down here.
Yes, maybe. Excellent, good. And then explaining, you see there are different activities here, not just laboratory work, but also training the doctors to use the vaccine in their context, training the nurses of good practices, and establish a consortium for the next action, so that the project end is linked to the next activity. And then explain how this is linked to what the European Commission would like to achieve, how it is linked to the particular strategic objectives of the big project. And then all the details go into the work packages. Step 1, construct the DNA in the laboratory. If that is done, you transfer it to the next team that has a next work package. And each work package you describe how many person months, and I will come back to that after coffee break, how many person months you need from each of the partners. So some partners will do more than other partners. And each work package has their own role. The work package leader is not necessarily the coordinator. So you can be a work package leader in a project, even though the coordinator resides in Europe. So if you're a specialist in, for example, in this case, building a certain task, building DNA for the vaccine that will be tested in Europe, you can be the package leader and ask the other partners to send the information and material to you so that you can guide the quality of that work package. And there is a second reason why I suggest you to be work package leader. That is, being work package leader, you're part of the core team in the consortium. So you need to have a very close relationship with all the other partners and with the coordinator, and they cannot ignore you because you're out there in Africa. They need to involve you in all the core decision makings. And that is a very powerful decision, so you can guard and protect your own rights and not being, avoid decision being made in absence of you. So I really encourage you to think whether you can be a work package leader and guard the quality of your work package. And that way your profile really is much higher. In each work package you also describe what is being done inside that work package, the different tasks there, and what is the outcome, the deliverables. And pay attention to this, because that will be judged at the end of the project by the Commission. If you do not deliver exactly what you promise, then they will say, yeah, we have invested. I will keep this one. Thank you. And then in describing the impact, as I said, impact is extremely important to describe well, because the Commission would like to see that the results are actually going to move into society. And usually that is a project, a task that is beyond the scope of the project itself. So describe, in this case, again, the HIV project, what is the size of the market, for example, number of patients and companies that are working in that, sales figures there, commercialization potential, and this will be filled by your industry partners. They will know the market size, how much sales they expect, etc. So they need to write this part of the text. But you might, as a university, might know what are the other stakeholder benefits. For example, in the case of delivering a vaccine to patients, you help keeping the healthcare cost of treatment down. So there's a healthcare budget for the countries, and that's a benefit to the country, and a benefit to the insurance companies too, or to the population at large. So it's more than just building a vaccine, but linking it to the problems in society. And for that, you will probably need to talk to the healthcare minister, to the insurance companies, etc. So organize a meeting during the proposal or during the end of the project to tell about the results so that they know about it and they can give their input whether this is useful or not. And link it to deliverables. So deliverables are the vaccine, the reports, the groups, the conferences that you organize. This is a summary of the evaluation reports. The evaluation of the proposals, as I said, will be judged on scientific and technology quality. They give 1 score, up to 5, 1 to 5. They look at the implementation, look at what is the management structure, how do you qualify the individual participants. Are they all good, or are there really bad participants in there? That might give a negative score. And the quality of the consortium as a whole, how they collaborate. And you might have a bunch of different pieces of a puzzle, but they need to fit seamlessly together. There need no gaps in there. And then, of course, the link to what you want to do and how much money you ask. If it's a very small task and you ask for the full 3 million euro, they might say, well, that's not very well balanced. It's not ambitious enough. On the other hand, like somebody said yesterday, we are going to, in a 3 million euro project, we are going to solve global warming alone. I mean, that's maybe a bit too ambitious. And then, so you get a score here, 1 to 5, on implementation and feasibility. And then you get another score, 1 to 5, on impact. Whether at the end of the project you have built something that is valuable and can be transferred to society. Will it actually change something to the problem, or will it be a minute contribution? For example, just a training program in one city in the corner of Poland will not have any impact in Europe. So you need to see what the size of the project that you have, how much you can change in society. And give another example. If you have a pilot plantation of forests here, or fruit trees here in Africa, and you design also a way to transfer that good practice to many other countries, then you have impact. So that should be part of the program, part of the project. Think of it. And then the actual transfer can be done after the project, but you have to design all the elements that allow that impact to be realized. Actual example, the project that we are here, RIMI for AC, is where University of Boer is one partner. My company is a partner in Europe. The ACU, the Association Commonwealth Universities, is another European partner. And we have partners, about 6 universities across the continent. The call, we knew about the call very late. And I was working on part of the proposal, Sarima was part on the proposal, but neither of them were ready. We started talking in December 2008, and then finally merged the two ideas, worked out in an extremely fast way, unrealistic fast actually, and submitted the whole consortium just in time, 15 minutes before deadline. This is not good practice. That's what I did. So everybody knows this happens, and please try to avoid that, because it delivers a lot of stress. Now, in this particular case, it was hand delivery. For the FP7 projects, it's electronic submission. So the coordinator in Europe will submit to the European Commission on a platform, but he or she will need your information in time. So please deliver the information ahead of time, well ahead of time, so the coordinator can finalize the final forms and submit in time. They would be extremely angry if one partner delivers information too late. And I know it happened. We have lost a project with 6 million euro because one partner did not fill in the forms. And he was nearly lynched. Then it was evaluated in the next 3 months, and after the summer, we actually got last year the award letter. So that was big party, 3 million euro was award. Then we still had to negotiate. So it took 3 months to negotiate, and in October we actually got the contract. So this was relatively fast, from December to October having a contract, and we started in December last year. 1 year. But I know the larger projects, they take a longer time to prepare and a longer time to negotiate. So be prepared for long timelines. Quickly, just the last few 5, 6 slides to get your head thinking before we go to coffee. I switch mode here. I'm not talking about proposals, I'm talking about management principles. A very, very basic project management skills here now. And I hope you know all this by heart already, and I'm looking stupid telling you again. Let's consider a project. What can you manage? Let's take building a house. That's a project, no? You can you can manage the scope. You want a small house, a cabin, or a large house, or a palace. That is the objective, what you want to achieve. And that defines what you want to do, the activities. Now, aside from the scope, I mean, don't forget that agreeing on objectives with your partners is something that is not easy, because everybody has their own mind, everybody has their own plans. And this is an example of a project in the aerospace industry where they all agreed, something like 50 partners working together, to build an airplane. They said yes, everybody enthusiastic, and they got away and got their activities in their own laboratories and industries. And then when they came back for the first meeting, they discovered somebody had thought about the motor, another one on equipment, and another one on guns, because they thought it was a military airplane. Well, these guys were building a motor for a civilian airplane or recreational thing. And all the parts did not fit together. Now, this could have been avoided, no? So, in the first preparation phase of designing the proposal, and again, during the kick-off meeting, really spend time on agreeing on the objectives and work out the detail from who does what and do the pieces fit together. Because you can avoid spending 2-3 days working, discussing this together, can save you months later and a lot of work. Over and over again, I see in projects failing because they don't fit together, they have to go back, redesign or redo their work, and you lose a lot of time and money. So this is one of the key elements in management. Then you can manage time and cost. And time is, you take a lot of time to build the best possible solution and the best, but that requires a lot of cost. If you build a better house, you need more time, you place each brick manually, etc., very carefully, but that has a cost there. And that may impose a limit too. And then, of course, there's the risk. There are internal risks, people going ill, people leaving the consortium, things in research that do not turn out as you think they would be. And there are external risks. Building the house, you have floods, you have weather, you have an external supplier who does not provide the materials that you have or not. In research, this is true as well. You order an antibody from a German company and it's stuck at the customs. And it's molten down because it was not kept on ice. So you have to start over again and you lose money. Those are risks. And then the quality you want to achieve, I mean, there is a limit to it. If you go too fast, the quality is too low and it's useless for the next person who will take the next step. If it's too high, it's too costly and it takes too much time. So these, if you manage a project, need to find a balance. And that is really what management in research is about, finding balances. Balance the risk versus the value, like the quality you generate. And communicate with the stakeholders. Whoever should know what you're doing, tell them voluntarily, proactively. And then, of course, you start with the problem definition, then you look at who should benefit from what you want to do in the project, what do you need to do in terms of people, partner, and cost, and then you start writing. Not first. First you think about this, and then you start writing, and you deliver and describe who, what, when, how, and what if. So this is very general, but it's basic project management that is really, really crucial to be successful. And then one other aspect, before we go to coffee, assign roles according to personalities. You have these leaders, scientific leaders, that have this vision, they can drive a project, they can really motivate people to work together, and they're fantastic, but they're not necessarily good managers. They may not have any sense for time control and budget control. They may hate bureaucracy. So the best way, I find, in these slightly larger projects, to have a manager that may not be the technical expert, sitting next to the leader and the visionary. And they chase the people like with the whip to be on time, to deliver the projects and the reports, and to keep within budget. And they talk to the bureaucracy and the administrators. So they have two different roles according to their personalities and their interests. Some people don't have the vision, but they love to chase people to be strict and ordered and structured. They're good managers. And other people are really giving direction. And you need both. You really need both in a good project. In the very small projects, this may not be relevant, but the moment you work with more than 2, 3 partners together, this becomes really crucial. Then the activities and the costs, which I will go into after coffee break, are in all the European projects divided in 2 categories. The research, the actual research you do, this is described in the different work packages, and the time and the cost related to management, to attend the meetings, to do the kick-off meeting or the final conference. Those costs are always subsidized 100%, while these costs may be co-funded. So already when you design a budget, and I will give an example later, split the 2 activities there. And then an evaluator will look at your time plan and see whether there is any logic in there. And I hope you all know this, but if you have the different work packages, they have a logical sequence. You need to do this and complete it before another task can start. You don't build a roof before you have the walls and the foundation. It's as simple as that. Now the evaluator will look at the logical sequence from which activities can go in parallel and which need to follow in sequence. And then at some point you reach a point where you need to make a critical decision. For example, if you have the walls and the roof completed, that is a milestone. Because then you have a roof over your head, and even if it rains, you can finish the decorations. No, that is a milestone. So it's good practice to have a meeting at that moment in time in your project and to decide together, yes, we have achieved this milestone. It's good. The roof is weatherproof. An evaluator will look at those milestones, whether they're logic. And if you have a meeting planned over there, if that is missing, he will start wondering why, and then he will start digging into the reasons. So this really helps an evaluator to navigate through your project quickly and find the relevant things that he is interested in. And that can be very simple. You don't need project management tools with very expensive software, just a simple Excel sheet like this. You have a work package, partner who is responsible for it. Usually the work package on project management is led by the coordinator. You have a work package on information, for example. I invent a project here. Huh? That is led by another partner. And you have another work package that is led by yet another partner. And then there's a partner responsible for dissemination. All the partners could be active in there, but the work package leader is indicated. And obviously dissemination is later than the early activities in the project. So this way you have already a summary of the project. And with the timeline of the number of years spent. Well, I will skip this one a little bit, but the evaluator might look at whether there is information lines between work packages and whether those information communication lines are in place. For example, if 2 work packages need to work in parallel and prepare something that is used in the next work package, at least they need to have one meeting to talk about how they are going to work in parallel so that the 2 pieces will fit together here. And then the governance structure of many projects, and you can design your own, but in many projects it looks a little bit like this. You have working groups, each with their own work package leader and with their own meetings, and they have a joint project board where not everybody is partner, but the members are the work package leaders and usually the main partners in the project. This is the reason why I said if you're a work package leader, you will have a seat on the project board and you can help making decisions. That saves you a lot of effort and you can control your budget that way. Then the coordinator is one of the partners, is the only one who talks to the European Commission. So in this case, you do not call up the project officer. They will not even want to listen to you. They want to use all the communications lines are through the coordinator. That means that you need to be very good friends with him or her. If you have a problem, you're in trouble. And then, of course, you can have other advisory committees as needed that could open doors to industry, to policy, to governance, to other projects. So you can invite coordinators of other projects that are working in the same field into an advisory committee and invite them into a special meeting with your project management board and exchange good practice and see whether when you're planning a conference, it's not coinciding with planning a conference in another project, whether some of your material can be useful for another project. So that way is implementation and dissemination. And it's really collaborating together and listening to each other, not fighting. It's not this way. With that, we go to coffee. And after coffee, I will talk about the finance, and we see an actual project budget, and then we go a little bit to the actual project examples. And after that, we will have a question and answer session. I will be at your disposal as long as you need for project ideas that you have and how we can bring them forward. Some of you, and I've talked already to two of you who have actual ideas for projects and may need assistance in finding partners in Europe. So let's discuss that. If you're willing to discuss it openly in the floor here, we can do it. Or you can catch me in the afternoon, I will be here, and we can talk one-on-one as a coach to take your project idea and take the next step and prepare for one of the calls that will be published next month. Thank you very much, and enjoy the coffee. I don't know. You'll sit for 15, 20 minutes, half an hour?